This video demonstrates the first stage of the transformations of sitting for this boy 12 months later. So this is him sitting at the bench, so what could be called an edge sitting. One can see that the level of support has already changed. If you look at the supporting arms, they are not at the level of the chest anymore as they used to be. They are significantly lower at the level of the lower ribs. And at the same time, if we are to compare it with the previous picture, one can see a significant difference in overall control of all the elements of the body. This way we can talk about the changes at the level of the head control, shoulders, trunk all together. Let's have a closer look. You see, the boy is trying to use his arm without having it rigidly stuck. The boy is trying to move his head, again having some room for movement. But this is just the beginning. And therefore, what is happening, once he comes out, just out of this central sitting position, he drops downwards, and you can see he loses his balance. He works hard to get back to the position. Once he does it, one can see how stiff the arms get, but this is an obvious difference from before anyway, because in the past we've seen the arms going into this W position. In the past he was falling like a block without being able to counter react. I just want you to follow these lines, right? They're all just coming together at the same angle through the fall. And now we can see that he's starting to really work and come out of the position, right? Let's look at it again. The drop, effort, the movement forwards, which is in itself an important transition, right? As opposed to the past, where he was falling as a unit without having any selective room for movement between the rib cage and the pelvis. We can see that he has to work hard to get back to the position, but this fact of actually being able to work, that's an important transition, that's an important illustration of both the improving mobility and developing strength. Although, of course, at this stage, we can see that he really helps himself with his arms and with his head. But again, that's a huge difference from the past, where he was just throwing himself backwards. So we can see that he has managed to come out of the major constraint of that incredible stiffness. He has developed some room for movement, which is the important transition, and he has gained a certain initial space for confidence. A very important tool of the visual aid would be to draw something that could be called an elementary cone of support, inverted cone of support, where the base would be the platform of sitting, and within that cone one has to look at all of the directions, pointing out the directions of the adjustments and the ability to counterbalance that this boy needs, or to be precise, any person needs. So that's reflecting the rotational, forwards, backwards, left and right. And now once we visualize this cone, you can see that he is able to control a small part of this cone, right? Within this initial cone, with a very narrow base, he is confident. But to be able to control the sitting really well, he needs a much larger cone, which is depicted as red here. So therefore, essentially, what do you want to achieve? We want to develop this cone. You see, to start with, he had really nothing. It was really, really small, that cone that was available for him. Maybe something like this, very narrow one. That's why he was falling. Now that cone has expanded. But what do you want to see? We want to see further expansion. We want to see continuous build up of that cone further and further away, because only this way, building the levels within that cone and building a better platform of sitting, that's how he would be able to develop the proper sitting. So in this image, I believe, would be very helpful to you to understand the way that this transformation takes place. So once he is out of his cone of comfort, he is dropping. Once he is in it, he is able to do things, and you can see the starting basics, his ability to move his head selectively, initial transitions, which is a major step comparing to the past, where he was just fused. Getting back to the 3 domains of transformation that we talked about in the previous chapters, I would like to remind them: segmentation, weight bearing as the reflection of strength within that cone that I've just drawn, and on top of it, the 3rd domain, the room for the free movement. And again, this is what you see. He is starting to try to use his arm, right? Starting to come up. But why is it happening? How does that work? Let's have a closer look. I've drawn 2 cones here, right? The red cone reflects the cone of stability for the trunk, and then within the trunk there is an extra cone of the stability of the shoulder and the related arm. And then each of those cones, right, this cone has to be divided into a smaller ones, and then the arm cone has to be divided into the smaller. At this stage, we only see the very, very beginning. They are poorly segmented, but at least at this core connection between the shoulder girdle and the trunk, things are changing. And of course, on the right, we're seeing things as changing faster than on the left. So you see on the left, he is stiffer, he is less mobile at that level. So this is another useful image that I'd like you to focus on. And again, this initial cone defines that room for free movement, for the level 3, for the domain 3 of the free movement that this boy can have. But again, once he's out of this cone, you'll see what is going to happen. You see, once he just gets a little bit out, he loses his balance again, and the arms go into the simultaneous reaction. Of course, this is already a much better response than what we've seen in the past, when he had been, showing this classic W with throwing his head backwards. However, this is still not what we want to see. We want to see the true release of the arms, the separation of those cones. And let's observe his movements further. So obviously his level of confidence in the sitting position has improved, so he's showing dynamism. But you can see that as he's showing this dynamism, instead of being just blocked and stuck, elements are moving, the legs are starting to move within the pelvis, you have large movements of the arms, you have certain room for the movement of the head, but you can see that at this stage, the available hand movements, arm movements are still relatively primitive, all right? You can see that the elbow is not really working and moving. He is able to do this large swing of the fake straight arm, or to be precise, of the unbendable arm. And you see, as he shifts very clearly within that cone that I've just drawn. So what would we want to see in the future? We want to see further division within each of the cones. We would want to see this initial cone that we built dividing further into the segments. We would want to see the base of it expanding, so thus relieving it from the volatility of the drops to the sides and forwards. Then we'd want to see the development of those much larger cones available for the arm, and then respectively of the changes within them, so that formation of the subcompartments, first the elbow, then the wrist, then the hand, and so on. And similarly, the same story goes for the legs. At this stage, the leg moves as a unit within this single large cone. So the core thing for us to see in the future, to see the divisions within it. And then again later on the next one, the next one, the next one. Of course, at this point, the alignments, such as the straightness, is not really realistic. The core focus that we want to look at is seeing the mobility within, and the segmentation as the core part, as the base, and strengthening within the weight bearing position, so that the support of the cone would be moving further down, thus showing the growing level of self-stability and self-control. I hope that these examples illustrate and help you understand how the initial transitions take place. And you see, I'm getting back to this important test, the movement of the head. Again, the changes are obvious. He is not yet controlling it, but at least we can see that the rigid position of the arms that we've seen before is less pronounced. You see, he was just moving as the unit previously, having his arms being pulled upwards even more. And again, we have a clear explanation for this. Things are very straightforward, no mystery signals here. So let's just look at the core levels. So this is the level of the clavicles. This is where this boy started to have the initial room for movement. That's why the head drag is not resulting in such a profound involvement of the arms. It's very straightforward. And again, this is the result of the deliberate work. And this deliberate work has been related through, within the ABR program, this work has been focused on strengthening, on the development of the strength of the compartments of the body, of the trunk, of the neck, of the connections, shoulder level, and so on. So this is the focus that we had. And again, I would keep emphasizing release and the improvement of mobility under the ABR program occurs as a byproduct, should I say, of strengthening, not as a forceful stretching. Muscles are a secondary target for us in that sense. We just observe their transformations consistently following the strengthening of the deeper fascial level. So that's the core emphasis of ABR, and this is what we see consistently as the facts. Superficial muscles respond positively to the internal strengthening transitions. Let's move on and have a little bit extra of a detail. So we are zooming in on the body, and we are seeing that clearly there is a room for movement that starts appearing between the rib cage and the pelvis. We go further, we see that at the level of the back, he is starting to show some initial rotational mobility. So his flexibility from a completely fused back has changed. That's the image from the past, where things were completely blocked at all of those levels. You see, it's hard to read anything. It was hard to read anything here, because he was so poorly segmented. Whilst now we can see that he's starting to show a specific shape and being able to have this passive mobility in the both rotationally to the left and to the right. So these tests, they are the ones that describing and explaining why he has improved so much in his overall stability in sitting. So this test shows you some remaining challenges. So this is a very simple test. Head is being moved from position on the back, and I want you to have a look at this particular level. So as he is being moved, watch the level of the abdomen and the rib cage here. What is happening? The head movement at this stage, right, in the beginning, this is a real head movement, but going further, it's no longer a head movement. It's the fold of the rib cage into the abdominal space. So this is what we describe as compressional weakness. Let's have a close look. You see, that's what's happening. A rib cage folds into itself and then folds into the abdominal space. In the past, we have seen just the immediate collapse, like immediate conflict between the pelvis and the rib cage in this region. Now he's starting to have some initial space, and that's why he's being much better movable than before. So this is a very important test that I want you to understand for the future, and this is one of the key fundamentals. So in simple terms, what do we want to improve with the MBR? We want to improve the manifestations of this compressional weakness throughout the entire body. Another important thing that we can get out of this test, you can see that throughout this range of movement, the boy is bendable forwards, but what is happening as he reaches the end, that's it. And this is a very important test because it points out the essential thing. In the past, we have seen that his legs have not been bendable at all. Now we are starting to see some responses within the knee or at the level of the knee. However, from the rigid, hyperextended legs of the past that were not even bendable at the knee, now we are having bendable legs, but they're still not capable of providing the boy with the basis for the tailor sitting position. They're still too stiff. We can't bend them. So at this stage, the tailor sitting position, the floor, this cross-leg sitting position, Indian sitting position, different places of the world use different names for it. So that position is still not available. And that is going to be a really important stage for the future, because this is a first of independent sitting, first of the sittings. If you look at the development of the healthy child, that's the tailor sitting that they start from as the first controllable achievement. But for that, this boy needs much better mobility of the back, much better room between the rib cage and the pelvis, change of the sitting platform, and the room for movement in the attachments of the legs in the pelvis. So these are the future plans, to say so. These are the constraints that he experiences in order to be able to achieve the tailor sitting, and that's what we are going to look at as this core transformations for that particular aspect. And of course, getting back to the sitting itself, what we want to see, improving room for movement for each and every of the inverted cones, right? The inverted cone of the head, the inverted cone of the trunk, and the inverted cones of the arms. And then the formation of the sitting platform. So in the next stage, that's what we would be looking for. This is what our goals are, right? This is what we want to see, and it's understandable that we can't really predict how long does it take on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's once you get into this analysis of details, it's easy to understand what are the next milestones. Because without these transitions, it would be still impossible for the boy to get better counterbalance. So that's a very straightforward, let's say, transition. First domain, segmentation. Second domain, expansion of the base of strength. Third domain, development of the voluntary purposeful function. Thank you. Let's watch the next part.